Hello, I'm Brent Stafford, and this is Aftermath of Murder Survivor Stories, a multi-part video series produced in support of the National Victims of Crime Week. Aftermath of Murder goes behind the headlines as survivors share their stories about the loss, grief, trauma, and the hope for healing in the aftermath of murder. Joining us today is Marcheta Tanner. Her 22-year-old son, Trevor, was murdered in 2004 in a case of mistaken identity during a contract killing. Thank you for joining us, Marcheta.
Thanks, Brent.
So tell us about the night your son Trevor was murdered.
He was going to a bar downtown, play some pool, have some drinks, and told me not to worry if he didn't come home because he thought he might go to the lake afterwards. So Sunday morning when I got up and his shoes weren't at the back door, I wasn't worried because I thought he was at the lake. And but he was going to be home for supper. My doorbell rang. And it was two RCMP officers. So they didn't want to speak to me because I was alone. And I didn't want to wait. I wanted to hear what they had to say. So one officer took some contact numbers, and the other one sat me down at my kitchen table and told me that Trevor had been found at the end of the river access road in Lockport. And he told me that he was dead. I didn't believe him. I thought he had made a mistake, so I wanted to go find some pictures of Trevor to show him that he was wrong. But he didn't let me go. He had made a mistake. And I had been feeling sorry for these RCMP officers because I thought this has to be one of the worst parts of their job, telling a mom that their son is dead. And I thought, oh, that's too bad because now they have to go into somebody else's driveway. But they had the right mom. And then at some point, my husband Jack came home. And the look on his face, I suspect, was a mirror of my own. Shock, disbelief.
Now, the night Trevor was murdered, it was the wrong guy, wrong place in the wrong time, wasn't he?
Yeah. There was a contract out to kill another person, and they took Trevor by mistake. And even though when they were on their way out of town, they found out that Trevor wasn't this other person, they were mad and they killed him anyway. And I just asked, like, why? Why couldn't they just drop him off? Why couldn't they just dump him on the side of the road? Why take him and kill him?
It's hard to make sense of.
It's impossible to make sense out of the senseless.
Tell me about Trevor.
Trevor beat to his own drum. He liked doing things his way. And he was a little bit eccentric in many ways. He had an eye for fashion. He was a good baseball player. He loved volleyball, loved basketball. He liked golfing with me because I always paid. And he beat me all the time, but that's not hard to do, but he was good at golf.
We're 10 years.
It'll be 10 years on July 4th.
And it's like it was yesterday.
It's like it was yesterday. Time doesn't make sense anymore. In a way, it seems like it's been forever since Trevor's been home. And in other ways, it just seems like it happened yesterday.
Were his killers brought to justice?
One was arrested, charged, and convicted. He was charged with first-degree murder originally. 2 days before jury selection, my husband and I were called into the Crown's office. And as soon as I opened the door into the office, I knew something was wrong, terribly wrong. And they plea bargained.
To what?
Second-degree murder, no chance of parole for 17 years.
Is that enough?
It's not enough. My husband made Trevor a promise at his grave that he was going to get justice. And life with no parole for 17 years wasn't justice, especially in my husband's eyes. Mine too, but especially in Jack's eyes. But that's all we could ask for. In the end, nothing can ever be enough, because no matter what happens, Trevor still is not coming home.
In our pre-interview, you told us about a letter you received shortly after Trevor's death.
Right.
What was in that letter?
A man came to our house and dropped off a letter, and I opened it up, and it was addressed to Jack and I, and he introduced himself as being one of the very few people that we would get to know that really knew what we were going through. He offered his sympathy and his support, and most importantly, his friendship. It was a beautiful letter, but at the beginning, I couldn't bear to see his eyes. I couldn't bear to look at myself in the mirror because my eyes were empty and dull. And I just couldn't bear the thought of meeting somebody else with dull eyes like my own. But quite by accident, I did meet him at my parents'. My sisters had contacted him because they all wanted to meet him. And I walked in the kitchen and they were all sitting there with him.
Floyd.
With Floyd, the one and only Floyd. And it was a blessing. Knowing you're not alone, for lack of a better word, entering into a club that nobody would ever want to belong to.
So as you're dealing with the aftermath of murder, what's been the lifeline for you?
Besides my family, my lifeline has been the Compassionate Friends.
What's that?
It's an international self-help group for parents grieving the death of a child. And it was there that I found out that I wasn't going crazy. It was a terrible burden to think that your mind isn't right. And my mind needed to be right for my son.
So being around other survivors of homicide made a big difference?
Yeah, mostly it was people who had lost a child for me. But I did meet other parents who had lost their children to homicide.
Tell me about healing. Is there such a thing?
I'm not sure you're ever completely healed. It's like you have you might have a little skin covering that wound, but you're never completely healed. There's always a void, always a void. It's like that empty chair in the kitchen. It'll never be filled.
What have you done to take action in terms of the healing process?
I've made many new friends, where many of the people that I associated with prior to Trevor's death disappeared from my life. And nobody's fault. It's just what happened. But after Trevor's death, people came into my life whose children had been murdered or whose children had died from different causes, but they were their children. And together, we bonded in this commonality of loss and grief. And I learned how to smile again.
Is the shine back in your eyes?
Not all of it. It'll never always be there. Not all of it will return, but it has. It has. And I can have a good time now. I'm willing to go out. I'm willing to do things.
Is there hope?
There's hope. That's probably the biggest thing I received, was that there was hope. In the beginning, I thought it won't happen for me. I'm glad that you have, people I've talked to, I was glad that they had been able to find a reason to live, have a good time, be able to laugh and smile and enjoy life again. But I didn't think it was going to happen for me. I really, really didn't. But it has. Life is different. It will never be the same. Nothing can ever, ever be the same without Trevor. But I'm going on.
If you or someone you know has experienced a loss through homicide,
Go to the Manitoba Organization for Victim Assistance website at mova.ca to find available resources and information on homicide support. If you are interested in volunteering or to make a donation, please visit the website or call the numbers below. This has been Aftermath of Murder Survivor Stories.